Alina had once believed that marriage came with a certain rhythm, a gentle, predictable sway between two people who trusted the silence as much as the words. In the beginning, silence with Mark had been warm, a blanket of mutual understanding. They could sit on the worn gray couch in their small apartment, legs touching, neither needing to speak. She had loved that. She had loved him. But silence changes when people do. It had been 6 years since the wedding, 3 since Mark had been promoted, and nearly 1 since Alina had begun to feel like someone fatting out of a photograph, visible only if you remembered where she used to stand. He left early for work, came home late, and carried exhaustion like a second briefcase. Their conversations shrunk to logistics, bills, groceries, whether the faucet still leaked. The softness had gone first, the laughter next, the touch almost entirely. She remembered the exact morning she realized she was lonely. She had poured 2 cups of coffee automatically, then stared at the second one sitting untouched long after Mark rushed out the door. His absence had become so normal that she had prepared coffee for a ghost of routine. That day she whispered into the still kitchen, "I miss us." No one answered. Alina worked remotely as a freelance illustrator, spending most days moving color across a digital canvas and pretending the shapes made the apartment feel full. Sometimes she forgot to turn on music and didn't notice until the sun dipped behind the complex across the street. She used to text Mark small things, photos of sketches, jokes, or questions, but the replies had grown shorter, slower, more clipped. Eventually she stopped trying. It felt pathetic to send a message into a void and hope her husband would look up long enough to care. So when a stranger messaged her on an art forum, she thought nothing of it at first. "Your composition style is impressive. Do you take commissions?" The username was Ravel, just that. No profile picture, nothing identifiable. She hesitated only a moment before replying. She needed the work, and the compliment warmed her more than it should have. Their conversation began with project details, but it didn't stay there. He asked thoughtful questions about her inspiration, her favorite movies, the artists she loved. His tone was curious, deliberate, like someone actually paying attention. It startled her how easily she smiled at her screen. Over the next few weeks, messages became longer. He noticed details in her art even Mark never had, the shading around her character's eyes, the soft melancholy in her colors. He told her her work felt alive in a way he rarely saw. It wasn't flirting, not then, but it was intimacy of another kind, being seen. One evening, after another silent dinner with Mark, she found herself opening the chat with Ravel like reaching for a light switch in a dark hallway. "Rough day?" he asked only seconds after she logged in. It felt invasive how quickly he sensed things, and comforting. Alina typed back slowly, "Just tired of talking to walls." He replied, "You deserve to be heard." She closed her laptop abruptly, heartbeat thudding. No one had said something like that to her in a long time. Days passed, weeks blended, and Alina felt the quiet shift inside her. Ravel had become a presence, subtle at first, then insistent in the way warmth insists itself on cold skin. She told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong. They were just talking, just connecting, just filling a void her marriage had carved open. But late at night, lying beside her husband's turned back, she replayed Ravel's words in her mind. She felt guilt curl low in her stomach, a slow, sour ache. She could stop at any time. She told herself that more often than she admitted. One Friday evening, Mark arrived home past 10, loosening his tie with shaking fingers. He looked drained, older than he should at 34. "Long day?" Alina asked softly. He shrugged, dropping his keys on the counter without looking at her. "Every day's long." She waited for him to elaborate, to offer anything. He didn't. After a few moments she tried again. "Do you want to watch something together? We have an inn." "I'm tired, Lena," he interrupted, harsher than he likely intended. "Please, not tonight." He disappeared into the bedroom, leaving her standing in the half-lit kitchen. She didn't cry. She no longer had the energy. Instead, she opened her laptop. Ravel was online. "Are you awake?" she typed. "For you always." She stared at the message for a long time. It felt like stepping toward the edge of something dangerous. And she stepped anyway. The next phase was subtle. She didn't intend for it to happen, or at least that's what she repeated to herself. Ravel asked for her opinion on books, on music, on life. He praised her ideas, challenged her thoughts. He was witty, sharp. He made her laugh until she pressed a hand over her mouth so Mark wouldn't hear from the other room. Ravel became the first person she thought of when something interesting happened. He became the one she wanted to tell, even when she knew she should tell her husband instead. Mark noticed none of it. One afternoon, Elena lingered by the doorway when Mark left for work. His tie was uneven, his eyes tired. "Hey," she said quietly, "maybe we could go somewhere this weekend. Dinner, a walk, just us." He gave a small, distracted smile. "We'll see, okay." He meant no, she knew it. When the door closed, she didn't fight the tears this time. Later, Ravel sent her a voice note. Deep, smooth, warm in a way that seemed engineered to slide into the places loneliness had hollowed out. She replayed it 3 times. That night she dreamed of a faceless man whose voice she knew better than her own. When she woke, her cheeks were flushed, and guilt spread over her like a shadow. She told herself it was harmless. She told herself she was still a good wife. She wasn't sure she believed either. What pushed her further was small enough to overlook: a birthday. Not hers, Mark's. She spent hours planning a quiet celebration since he hated big gatherings. She baked his favorite cake from scratch, something she hadn't done in years. She bought him a leather-bound notebook for his ideas, because he always said he'd write a book someday. He walked through the door exhausted, shoulders heavy, hair slightly damp from the rain. "Happy birthday," she said softly. He blinked, confused. "Oh, right, I forgot." He forgot. The dinner she cooked sat cooling on the table. The candles flickered uncertainly in the draft. Mark rubbed his forehead. "I'm sorry, Lena. I'm just not in the headspace for this." Then he stepped into the bedroom, leaving her standing alone with the fatting smell of rosemary and chicken. She sat at the table until the candles burned out. Then, unable to help herself, she messaged Ravel. He forgot his own birthday. "I tried so hard. I don't know why I keep trying." The reply came quickly. "Because you're someone who loves deeply, but love shouldn't hurt this way." Her breath caught. He continued. "If he can't see you, someone else will." Someone else. Someone like him. Her heart both soared and cracked. Over the next weeks, boundaries eroded like stone under the tide. It wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 tiny ones. A picture she sent him of her sketchbook. Nothing provocative, but intimate in the way creativity often is. His compliment. "You look peaceful in that light." Her quickened heartbeat. The night he asked if she was happy, she told the truth. "I don't know anymore." The midnight calls where she whispered into the receiver so Mark wouldn't hear, telling Ravel about her fears, her dreams, the version of herself she used to be. Ravel listened, he always listened. And her heart betrayed her by blooming. She fell into the emotional affair long before she noticed it happening. When she finally realized she cared for this stranger, this mysterious voice with no face, she felt terror and exhilaration twist together inside her. She considered ending it, cutting the connection, saving what remained of her marriage. But then Ravel said one sentence she would replay for months. "You deserve someone who chooses you every day." No one had chosen her in a long time. So she stayed. The first time she lied to Mark was small. "I'm going for a walk," she said. She didn't mention she was going so she could talk freely with Ravel, without fear of Mark hearing something in her tone. The guilt gnawed at her, but the relief of hearing Ravel's voice drowned it out. He asked about her day. She told him things she hadn't shared with anyone. When she returned home, her cheeks hurt from smiling. The second lie was easier. The third easier still. Soon she was living between two worlds. The one where she was still Mark's wife, quiet and dutiful, and the one where she was someone bright and wanted, someone whose words mattered. Elena sometimes caught her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes held a new kind of light, part longing, part shame. One evening, as she brushed her hair, Mark appeared behind her in the mirror. "We haven't talked much lately," he said, almost awkwardly. A spark of hope flickered in her chest. "No," she agreed softly, "we haven't." He hesitated, eyes drifting toward the floor. "I'm stressed, work, been terrible. I don't want to take it out on you." His voice cracked slightly, "But I think I have been." Elena blinked, taken aback. She hadn't expected self-awareness. She turned toward him. "Mark, I miss you." He looked at her with tired eyes. "I know, I'm trying, I'll do better." For the first time in months, he reached for her hand. And she felt something inside her fracture. Because she didn't feel the jolt she used to, the warmth, the homecoming. All she felt was the memory of someone else's voice saying, "You deserve more." Mark squeezed her fingers gently, unaware of the war raging inside her. That night, Elena lay awake long after he fell asleep beside her. The ceiling felt too close, the air too thin. She tried to convince herself it wasn't too late, that she could pull back, repair the marriage, stop this before it spun further out of control. Then her phone vibrated quietly under her pillow. A message from Ravel. "Are you awake?" Her throat tightened. She stared at Mark's sleeping silhouette. Then she unlocked her phone. "Yes." The next morning, she made a decision. Not to end things. Not to confess. To meet him. Ravel had hinted before that he lived not far. She had never asked for specifics. Some part of her feared knowing. Another part craved it. But now the curiosity, the longing, the hunger for something alive, it all converged. She typed with trembling hands. "Can we talk in person?" The reply came after a pause long enough to make her sweat. "If you're sure." Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. "I am." Another long pause, then. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., I'll send the place." When she read the address he sent an hour later, she felt her stomach swirl. A quiet cafe outside the city center. Public, neutral, safe. Safe except for what it might awaken. Elena closed her eyes. She knew there were lines that once crossed could never be uncrossed. And she was about to cross one. Elena spent the entire next day in a haze, too alert, too aware of her own breathing, as if the world had shifted and she was the only one who noticed. Every movement felt deliberate, the slow stirring of sugar into her morning coffee, the sound of the spoon clinking against the mug, the rhythm of her footsteps across the living room floor. Mark left early again. He kissed her cheek distractedly, his lips brushing her skin with the absent-minded softness of a man touching a memory, not a wife. She watched him go without a word. She should have said something, should have asked him to stay, or told him she needed him, or confessed everything tangled inside her. But the words stuck in her throat like thorns. When the door closed, she leaned her forehead against it. Tomorrow, she would either shatter her marriage or shatter herself. She didn't know which outcome terrified her more. Time crawled. She tried to work, but her pen hovered uselessly above the tablet. Lines turned shaky, shapes collapsed, and colors bled into one another until she finally closed the program altogether. Her mind replayed every conversation she'd had with Ravel, every sentence, every quiet inhale on the other end of the midnight calls. Who was he, really? The truth scared her. The mystery excited her. The possibility consumed her. She built him up in her mind, kind, attentive, insightful, warm. She tried to temper her expectations, telling herself reality would be softer, smaller, less electric. But a part of her, the part starving for connection, wanted to believe he was exactly who he seemed. At noon she checked the mirror. Then again at 2. By 4 she was trembling. She changed her clothes 3 times before settling on something simple: dark jeans, a soft gray sweater, hair tied loosely but intentionally. She didn't want to look like she was trying too hard. She didn't want to look like she didn't care. At 6:10 p.m. her phone buzzed. Ravel still okay for 7. Her fingers hovered above the screen. Then, Elena, yes, I'm on my way. The cafe sat tucked along a quiet street near the water, warm light glowing through its windows, rain misting the glass. Autumn leaves clung to the pavement in thick clusters, their colors muted by the approaching dusk. Elena paused outside, pulling her coat tighter around her. Her pulse throbbed in her throat. Through the window she saw only a handful of customers. A couple in the corner whispering over steaming mugs. A young man reading a book. A barista humming softly as she wiped down the counter. But no one who looked like a man named Ravel. Elena opened the door. A gentle bell chimed above her. The warmth hit her instantly, carrying the scent of cinnamon and espresso. She scanned the room, her breath shallow, her palms damp. Then someone stood. He rose from a table near the back, a shadow separating itself from the dim light. Tall, dark hair, a quiet, deliberate stillness about him. He didn't smile, not immediately. He only looked at her, eyes deep and unreadable, as if searching her face for confirmation that she was real. "Elena," he asked, voice exactly as she remembered, smooth, low, unmistakably intimate. Her knees nearly buckled. "Yes, it's me." He moved closer, and the space between them seemed to vibrate with a tension she hadn't expected. He extended a hand. She took it. It was warm, gentle, familiar in a way that made her chest ache. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly. "I wasn't sure either," she admitted. He released her hand slowly, as though reluctant to let go. He gestured to his table and she followed, feeling like she was walking into a dream, or a mistake she couldn't undo. They talked. At first about small things: work, the weather, the cafe's music. The conversation flowed easily, but beneath it pulsed something deeper, something dangerous. Her pulse quickened every time his eyes lingered on her. He noticed everything: how she tucked her hair behind her ear, how she held her mug with both hands, how her gaze drifted toward the window when she felt overwhelmed. He laughed under his breath when she stumbled over her words, not mockingly but warmly, as if he found her flustered charm endearing. He was real, more real than she'd prepared for. "So," he said quietly after a long pause, "are you disappointed?" "In what?" "In meeting me, in breaking the barrier." She shook her head. "No, that would be impossible." A flicker of emotion crossed his face: relief, surprise, something softer. "Good, because I've imagined this moment too many times." Her breath caught. He reached across the table, brushing the back of her hand with his fingertips. The contact was brief, but it ignited a spark that shot through her entire body. "Elena," he murmured, "you're exactly as I thought and more." She froze, torn between leaning in and pulling away. This wasn't just emotional intimacy anymore. This was the edge, and she was standing on it. They talked for nearly 2 hours. The cafe emptied out, but neither noticed. Rain intensified outside, streaking the windows with silver. When the barista announced last call, Elena realized with a jolt that she didn't want to leave. Ravel seemed to sense it. "Walk with me," he suggested. She hesitated only a second. "Yes." They stepped out into the drizzle. The street lamps cast golden halos over the wet pavement, reflections shimmering like fleeting stars. She walked beside him, close enough to feel his warmth through his coat. For several minutes they said nothing. The silence between them wasn't like the silence with Mark, heavy, distant, full of unsaid resentments. This one was charged, alive. Finally he spoke. "Does he know?" he asked. The question struck her like a crack of lightning. "No," she whispered. "Do you want him to?" She swallowed hard. I don't know." He nodded slowly as if he had expected that answer. "You're hurting, Alina, more than you admit. You don't have to pretend with me." She stopped walking. He did too. The rain dampened her hair, but she barely felt it. "Why do you care so much?" she asked, voice breaking. "You don't really know me." Ravel stepped closer, close enough that she felt his breath on her skin. His expression softened, eyes full of something she had longed to see in someone's face for far too long. "But I do," he whispered. "I know your voice when you're tired, when you're hopeful, when you're pretending to be fine. I know the silence between your sentences. I know the way you apologize for things you shouldn't. I know you're strong, even when you think you're breaking." Her chest rose sharply, air catching. "And you," he added, brushing a raindrop from her cheek with his thumb, "make me feel alive." The world blurred. Her breath trembled. This was the moment. The cliff's edge. The point of irreversible decision. If she turned away now, she could still go home, crawl into bed beside her husband, pretend nothing had changed. Pretend she hadn't come here. Pretend she wasn't falling. But if she stepped forward, Ravel's fingers slipped gently beneath her chin, lifting her face toward his. "Alina," he whispered, "tell me to stop." She couldn't. She didn't. Instead, she closed her eyes. His lips met hers. It wasn't a hungry kiss or a reckless one. It was soft, achingly, devastatingly soft, like someone touching a wound with reverence rather than desire. It deepened slowly, her trembling hands finding their way to his coat, his sliding to her waist as if drawn there by instinct. Heat pooled in her chest, her stomach, her throat. The rain fell harder, but she barely noticed. For one suspended, impossible moment she felt seen again, wanted, cherished, alive. When they finally parted, her breath shook violently, and guilt crashed into her like a tidal wave. She stepped back, covering her mouth. "Oh God, Ravel didn't touch her again. He let her have space, his own breathing unsteady. "Alina," he said gently, "I'm not asking you for anything. Not a promise, not a choice, not tonight. I just needed you to know what this is." She squeezed her eyes shut, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to do." "You don't have to decide now." "But I crossed a line." "You didn't cross it alone." Tears spilled despite her efforts to hold them back. He reached out again, but this time only to give her his handkerchief. She accepted it with shaking fingers. "We should both go," he said softly, voice tight with emotion he tried to hide. "Before this becomes harder." She wanted to protest, to stay, to run, to rewind time. Instead she nodded. He walked her to the corner, stopping beneath a flickering street lamp. "Will you message me when you get home?" he asked quietly. Yes, I will." His eyes softened. "Good, be safe." He turned away slowly, as if each step cost him something. She watched him disappear into the rain. Only when he was gone did she release a trembling breath. Her lips still tingled. Her pulse still raced. Her conscience still screamed. By the time she reached home, she felt hollow and full at once. The living room was dark, Mark's shoes by the door, his jacket on the hook, the familiar shape of him asleep in their bed. Alina sank to the floor. She had changed everything. And nothing. All at once. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ravel. "Home safe." She stared at the screen, heart splintering. Then slowly she typed, "Yes." Her hand shook as she hit send. Alina barely slept. Her mind roamed in circles, tight, dizzying spirals, between guilt and longing, between the memory of Ravel's lips and the weight of Mark's steady breathing beside her. She lay on her back staring at the ceiling until dawn brushed faint pink along the curtains. At 6:12 a.m. Mark stirred. She closed her eyes quickly, pretending to sleep. She couldn't face him, not yet, not like this. He leaned over to kiss her forehead, a habit he still kept, and she forced herself not to flinch. His touch felt foreign and familiar all at once. It hurt in ways she couldn't articulate. When he left for work, she finally exhaled. Her chest ached. It wasn't just guilt. It was the terrifying pull toward someone else. The knowledge that she had stepped across a threshold and left something behind, something she wasn't sure she could ever retrieve. A message vibrated on her phone. Ravel, good morning. A pause. How are you, really? She stared at the screen, fingers hovering. Then quietly she wrote, Elena, I don't know. I feel everything at once. His reply came moments later. Ravel, then let me help you hold some of it. Her breath caught. She hated how much she wanted that. How much she needed it. The next days unfolded like a slow unraveling, threads pulling loose one by one. She and Ravel didn't meet in person again, but their messages grew longer, deeper, more intimate. He sent thoughtful questions that made her examine parts of herself she hadn't looked at in years. He sent a photo once, of the waterfront near his apartment at sunset. Nothing revealing. Just a soft orange sky over dark water. But she stared at it for a long time, imagining him standing there alone, thinking of her. Elena sent him a picture of her sketchbook again. This time, she didn't crop out the corner where her hand rested. He commented on the curve of her wrist, the way her fingers held the pencil with quiet precision. His attention undid her. Every message from him felt like stepping closer to the cliff's edge. Every message she sent felt like leaning into the fall. Meanwhile, Mark floated around her like a ghost, quiet, tired, trying in small ways she couldn't accept, not now, not when her heart pulsed in two directions. He brought home pastries one morning, her favorite almond croissants. Thought you might like these, he said softly. She forced a smile, thank you. But she tasted nothing. Her guilt had numbed her tongue. Later that night, Mark sat beside her on the couch, hesitating before placing his hand on hers. I want to talk, he said. Her heart jumped in fear. About what? Us. The word felt heavy, final. I know I've been distant, he continued. I've been drowning at work and I shut down when I'm overwhelmed, but I'm trying to fix that. Elena's throat tightened. He was trying, but now she wasn't sure she could. Mark looked at her with an intensity she hadn't seen in months. I don't want to lose you, Lena. The words pierced her. She opened her mouth, wanting to confess, wanting to scream, wanting to collapse into him and beg him to see her, really see her. But the words died on her tongue. Because even now, even with her guilt pressing down like a weight, she wanted Ravel. She wanted the way he made her feel alive. She wanted the version of herself she only seemed to find when his name lit up her screen. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. And it was a lie that tasted like blood. That night, Elena tried to end things with Ravel. She tried. She typed a long message, explaining that everything had gone too far, that she needed to repair her marriage, that their kiss had awakened something she couldn't control but couldn't pursue. She wrote, We can't continue. She stared at the words. Her chest tightened. She deleted the message. Instead, she sent him. I saw Mark try today. It scared me. Ravel responded almost instantly. Because you don't know what you want. She hesitated. Because I do. And she did. And that terrified her most. There was a long pause. Then he wrote, "I'm not asking for you to choose me. Just be honest with yourself." She shut off her phone, but his words lingered like smoke. 2 days later, Mark suggested they go out for dinner. An attempt, a gesture, maybe even hope. Alina agreed. They walked hand in hand down their street, the late autumn air crisp, leaves crunching beneath their feet. For a moment, the familiarity soothed her. She remembered their early dates, the giddy sweetness, the ease. She remembered loving him fiercely. But memories weren't enough to bridge the chasm that had opened between who they used to be and who they were now. At the restaurant, Mark reached for her hand over the table. She didn't pull away, but she felt the absence of a spark. "How have you been?" he asked gently. She forced a smile. "Fine." "You've seemed distracted." Her heart seized, distracted. "Yeah, like you're somewhere else." She looked down at her plate. Mark's voice softened. "Talk to me, Lena, please." Her hands trembled. She wanted to tell him the truth. Or part of it. Or anything at all. But speaking would shatter the fragile balance she was clinging to. "I'm just tired," she whispered. Mark's eyes held hers a long moment. He didn't believe her. She could see it. He opened his mouth to ask more. Then her phone vibrated in her pocket. She shouldn't have checked it. She shouldn't have looked. But she did. A message from Ravel. "Thinking of you." Alina's breath hitched. The guilt hit like a wave. Cold. Crushing. Mark noticed. His expression changed, not angry, not accusing, but wounded, confused. "Who's that?" he asked quietly. Alina's blood went cold. "And no one," she stammered. He didn't press. But the question hung in the air between them like smoke. The dinner continued, but something fundamental had shifted. Mark wasn't blind. Not anymore. That night, Alina couldn't sleep. She walked to the living room and curled up on the couch, knees pulled to her chest. The quiet hummed around her. Her thoughts spiraled. She had to stop. She had to choose. But the idea of letting go of Ravel felt like tearing out a part of herself. The version of her that felt seen. The version that felt alive. At 2:17 a.m., she gave in and messaged him. "I can't keep doing this." A moment later. "I know. But you also can't go back to pretending you're happy." Her breath trembled. He wrote again. "Let's meet, one last time, so you can decide with both eyes open." Her pulse surged. One last time. The words echoed in her skull. One last time could break everything. Or save her. Or destroy her marriage beyond repair. She knew she should say no. Instead, she typed. "When?" They met at a park overlooking the water. Evening. Cold air brushing her skin, clouds drifting low and heavy. Ravel waited near the railing, hands in his coat pockets. When he turned and saw her, something in his expression changed, softened, deepened, a kind of tenderness that squeezed her heart painfully. "Alina," he breathed, as if her name was something sacred. She approached slowly. "We shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Then why are you?" Her eyes dropped to the ground. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." He exhaled shakily. "Good, because I can't stop thinking about you either." She closed her eyes. "Mark is trying," she whispered. "I know." His voice was raw. "And maybe he'll succeed. Maybe you'll find your way back to him." She opened her eyes. "Do you want me to?" Ravel stepped closer. Close enough that she felt the warmth of him seep through the cold. "I want you to be happy," he said softly. "Truly happy, whether that's with him or—" He stopped himself. "Or me." The words hung unspoken between them. A gust of wind rustled the leaves. Alina's heart hammered. "I feel like I'm split in two." "You're not," he murmured. "You're just finally waking up." He lifted his hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek. "Alina," he whispered, "look at me." She did, and she felt the world tilt. "You deserve more than loneliness in your own home," he said. "You deserve to be loved out loud." Her breath hitched. "Tell me you don't feel anything for me," he said. "Say the words and I'll walk away, forever." She opened her mouth. She tried. The words wouldn't come. Instead, her voice cracked into the cold air. "I feel too much." Ravel's eyes darkened, not with desire but with something deeper, something terrifying in its honesty. "Then let me." She didn't let him finish. She stepped forward and kissed him. This kiss was nothing like the first, nothing tentative or searching. It was fierce, desperate, a collision of everything she had been denying. He pulled her close with a low, broken sound. Her fingers tangled in his coat. The world fell away. Time warped, seconds stretching into something infinite. When they finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against his, breath trembling. "I can't keep living like this," she whispered. "I know. I'm scared." "So am I." She closed her eyes. "What happens now?" she asked. Ravel cupped her face gently, as if holding something fragile. "That," he said softly, "is up to you." Alina felt tears sting her eyes. Her marriage, her heart, her future, all of it hung in the balance. And she knew she couldn't avoid the inevitable much longer. The morning after the kiss in the park felt different, not heavier, not lighter, just sharpened. Every sound in the apartment seemed amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the tap of her fingers on the counter, the quiet sighs in her own breathing. Alina kept moving, cleaning already clean surfaces, wiping non-existent crumbs, rearranging cups until the cabinet looked like a showroom. She was avoiding looking at the truth. Avoiding looking at the heart she'd split between two men. Mark came home early that evening. She heard the door open, his keys drop into the bowl. For once he didn't look exhausted. He looked determined. "Lena," he said quietly, "can we talk?" The words sent a ripple of dread through her, but she nodded and followed him to the living room. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly. When he looked up, there was worry in his eyes. "You're not yourself," he said. "You've been distant and sad and somewhere else entirely, and I'm scared." Her breath caught. Mark continued, voice trembling, "I know I haven't been the husband you deserved. I know I've shut you out for months. I know I made you feel alone, but I want to fix this. I want us back. Tell me what's happening, please." The moment stretched like glass being pulled too thin. She should have confessed. She knew that. But the truth felt too sharp, too heavy, too destructive to drop between them so bluntly. "I don't know what's happening," she whispered. And that, at least, was not a lie. Mark rubbed a hand over his face, defeated. "Do you still love me?" Her throat tightened. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the man she had married. The one who made her laugh in the grocery store. The one who danced with her in the kitchen at midnight. The one who held her hand at her grandmother's funeral. The man who had once been her home. "I do," she said softly, "but I'm lost." Tears glazed his eyes. He reached toward her but stopped halfway, as if unsure whether he had the right to touch her. "Then let me help you find your way back." Her heart cracked painfully, because she wasn't sure back was somewhere she could return to. That night Alina couldn't sleep again. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the framed photos on the wall. Their wedding picture, a trip to the lake, laughing faces, arms around each other, eyes bright with a promise neither of them had managed to keep. She covered her face with her hands. She had to choose. She couldn't live in limbo forever, heart stretched so thin it might tear. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from Ravel. Are you awake? She hesitated. Then, yes. How are you holding up? Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to do. A pause, long enough to make her stomach twist. Then let's talk in person, one last time with honesty. She exhaled shakily. Honesty, a frightening word for someone who had lived in between truths. But she agreed. Tomorrow, they met again at the same park. Gray skies, sharp wind, the water churning softly against the rocks. Ravel was already there, leaning on the railing, staring out at the horizon. When she approached, he turned, and the emotion in his eyes nearly undid her. Elena, he murmured, you look tired. I haven't slept much. I know, his voice softened, neither have I. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Elena finally found her voice. Quiet, fractured, honest. I can't keep hurting everyone, she said. You mark myself. Ravel nodded slowly. I know. I care about you, she whispered. More than I should, more than I ever expected to. His jaw tightened. Pain flickered across his face, but also something else, something like acceptance. And I care about you, he said, but I don't want to be the reason your life falls apart. He took a step closer, but not too close, not like before. He was giving her space, one final kindness. You deserve to be fully loved, he said. Not in secret, not in fear. And as much as I want to be the one who gives you that, I don't want you to choose me out of escape or guilt. Her breath trembled. I don't know if I can go back to how things were, she confessed. Then don't, he said gently. Go forward however that looks, with or without me. The wind tugged at her hair. She closed her eyes. When I'm with you, she whispered, voice breaking, I feel like I'm waking up from years of sleep. Ravel's breath hitched. And when I'm with you, I feel like I'm breathing for the first time in months. Her heart twisted painfully. He stepped closer, but kept his hands at his sides. No matter what you choose, he said softly, I want you to choose it because it brings you peace, not because you're afraid, not because you owe someone your silence. Her tears spilled freely. I don't know which path leads to peace. Then maybe you have to walk alone for a while, he whispered. She opened her eyes. He was closer now, but still not touching her. Elena, he said, voice raw, I can love you. I won't deny that, but I won't hold you hostage to this, whatever this has become. You need clarity, you need space. And I need to let you have it. His voice faltered. This is me letting go. Not because I want to, but because you deserve the freedom to choose your life without me pulling you in any direction. Her breath hitched. Are you saying goodbye? He swallowed hard. Only if that's what you need. She stepped forward. He closed his eyes. Their foreheads touched, light trembling, aching. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a plea. It was a goodbye that wasn't spoken aloud. A goodbye that might not be final. A goodbye that carved itself into her. When she stepped back, his eyes were wet. Take care of your heart, he whispered, whichever path you take. She nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. He turned and walked away. He didn't look back. She watched him disappear into the fading light, the wind swallowing the space he left behind. Elena returned home to find Mark sitting on the couch, staring at the floor. When she entered, he stood, searching her face. Are you okay? He asked. She opened her mouth. For the first time in months, maybe years, she didn't lie. No, she said, but I want to be. Mark exhaled slowly, relief and worry mixing in his eyes. Then let's start there, together. She stepped closer, letting herself lean into his arms, not as the answer, not as closure, but as a beginning of something that might be rebuilt or might fall apart honestly this time. She didn't tell him everything that night. She wasn't ready, but she would. She owed him truth. She owed herself truth most of all. For now, she allowed herself to rest her head against his chest, listening to the familiar heartbeat that once felt like home. And somewhere, far across the city, she knew another heart was beating just as fiercely. She didn't know where the future would lead, whether she would rebuild her marriage, choose a new life, or walk alone for a while. But for the first time, the uncertainty didn't terrify her. It felt like possibility.